I guess we've closed the door that mean that we're supposed to get started here today. So thank you all for coming today. I'm really excited to be launching our I Engage You Funding Innovation Forum. Thank you for being here. It's a really exciting day. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the agenda, and then I'm going to turn it over to our board chair. Today we're going to hear from 3 of our current awardees for the Innovation Initiative, and we're going to be talking a lot more about the concepts and the themes that were going on when they were selected and what their projects are about. So you can learn about that. We're also going to spend some time going through the application, and I'll be telling you some of the content and things that we're looking for. You'll learn a lot of that by listening to these the people that are talking about their projects, but also we're going to have a time where we're going to bring up a board member from our board and have them tell, like, when we were having this discussion, what was it that really excited you? What was the board looking for? So you'll learn directly from them what they're looking for when they hear these proposals. And there are a lot of y'all out there, so I expect to see a proposal from all of you. Right? You're going to learn everything you need to know right now, and if not, call me. But every single one of you, okay? That would be awesome. So I'm going to turn it over now to our board chair, Elizabeth Dreiser. So come on up.
So good morning and welcome, everyone. I was just conferring with Nancy, and we realized that this is our 8th annual I2 funding forum. So woohoo, we've been at this for 7 years. So that means we've made 8 I2 grants in our tenure. And so what I thought I'd do is just share a little bit about those and, sort of from a walk down memory lane, what the aspects were that we looked at and what gave rise to those decisions. So first, I2 is really designed to provide folks like you, visionary organizations and leaders, with the resources that they need to leapfrog our current paradigm. So we're looking for projects that can meaningfully advance the health and wellness of those in need in our community. Notably, we're also looking for projects that hack the current paradigm, high potential for people being served, increasing access, increasing quality, and reducing cost. We recognize that we are in a cost-constrained environment, and so oftentimes, we're looking at how this innovation not only improves quality for patients and for individuals, but also makes it way more affordable for more of those people to be served. So that's part of what innovation, for us, we're looking for those aspects. So here we aim to inspire and encourage you guys. You're going to hear about some of the ongoing projects and learn more about our thoughts. We'll take a deeper dive into some, as Nancy articulated. We're going to have the Q&A. And what I thought I'd do is just tell you a little bit about the journey along the way. So Text for Babies. This was one of the first in our first year, both Text for Babies and One eApp. We couldn't decide, so we actually decided to do both. Every once in a while, we break our own plan. It's only happened once. But the opportunity here was, and the question we were testing is, can health education be distributed better, cheaper, faster, more ubiquitously through text messaging? And remember, this was 2010. I mean, the answer seems absolutely obvious right now, but at the time, it wasn't quite there. And so we seeded Text for Babies here. We also funded a efficacy study, which was really important. And I'm pleased to share that this is now ubiquitously part of baby visits throughout the state of California. So these are the kind of things, though, that I will share with you. It was long, patient work. We had a lot of road bumps along the way. We as funders, I think, and I'm proud to say that I think we were really good partners for Text for Babies, and it's really sort of a testimony to when we stand for things and we stand together with great partners, we can get stuff done. So that took a while. And Nancy, I'm trying to remember, it probably took us about 5 or 6 years before that actually really got realized. So One eApp, the question here was, could we aggregate the application process for social benefits, really trying to reduce the hassle for people, increase the dignity of those that needed to access benefits, and by doing so, could we make it less costly, avoid duplicative work, again, more, better access, better quality, and hopefully reducing cost. The CIE, Community Information Exchange, which is now 211 San Diego, the question there, was how we could aggregate and share information around the social services, and could we increase access, increase quality, and reduce cost. You'll see this is the theme. This is really the ingredient set that we look for in innovation. The UCSD Wireless Observed Therapy WATT program. Here, for those of you that know, direct observed therapy is sort of the method that we use to confirm that people are taking their meds historically in TB. And the question was, could we use a wirelessly observed therapy using technology to, again, make it more convenient for the people that need to take this therapy, make it less costly, and ultimately have better outcomes, because compliance, the hypothesis is that compliance will go up. So again, that was what gave rise to that particular funding. UCSD Wireless, so Access Youth Academy, this was a nod to our understanding of the long-term impact and the link between poverty and health, and the effect of the networks, both the individuals in this particular program, plus their siblings, their family, their communities, their neighborhoods, and could we, leverage squash, which is not a vegetable for some people. I've heard that before, but it's actually a racket game, and it is a method to get into Ivy League schools, and a lot of the inner city and City Heights population have succeeded in getting into schools, and getting into schools without any debt on the other end. And what does that mean for even making that possible and sort of opening up the access point of what folks in those communities see for themselves as their future. So solutions for change, we're going to talk more about here, so I'll leave that to the session. One more, North Island Family Medicine. This was the question of, could we flip the healthcare model for seriously mentally ill patients? Could we have a medical model where the mental health is first, and then the physical health wraps around that? There's a lot of interesting opportunities there, and so this again was about increasing the quality for that population, making it more likely that they would have better physical outcomes, and ultimately reducing cost as well. So another trifecta. Interfaith we're going to talk about here, so I'll leave that for our panel discussion. And what I want to say in closing is something about innovation, which has both success and failure. For anyone who does this work, you know this. It's about shifting and often upsetting the current paradigm. We know very well that things that we invest in, some of those will work, some of those will not work. For us, we know it's about finding the right mix of the market conditions, the timing, the right team with the right energy and passion, the right funders and partners, because we know it's not just us, and the staying power to ultimately get to sustainability. One interesting factoid that many of you may know, but I did not know until I heard it, is it comes from Bill Gross with Idea Lab. He's an incubator for many of today's big name companies. And he looked at 5 elements of success: idea, team, business model, funding, and timing. And surprisingly, he found that the number one thing that determined success was timing. Sometimes it's about the idea whose time has come. And so that was interesting, and we recognize that as well. And so then just to further set this, and by the way, it was 42% determinative, which I don't know how he figured out, so I'll just leave it at that. Just to further set the stage, and in closing here, I'm always reminded of Teddy Roosevelt's quote, just given the work of innovation, and in this posture, Alliance, sometimes gets thought of as the critic, but it's the man in the arena quote, and it's very well known to all of us, I'm sure, but it doesn't hurt to sort of set the stage today. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who actually does strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So we honor you who are in or are stepping into the arena and daring greatly. It is now my distinct privilege and honor to introduce our wonderful, energetic executive director who likely needs no introduction to most of you, owing to her fabulous community engagement, Nancy Sasaki.
Energetic? Huh. I don't know if I've ever been described. Yeah, right. Whatever. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It really does set the stage. I think that if there's so much in her comments that really talk to what the board is looking for and what we really try to fund. One of the things that is so exciting about the job, and I love my job, if y'all don't know that, I love my job. But anyway, what's really exciting is exactly that. I get to partner with each one of these groups and these organizations and these leaders, and we get to listen to what the challenges are and work through them together. And we stand behind them. I mean, there are some times where you'd think they would give up and say, forget this one, but we keep trying to find those solutions. We keep trying to find out how to make these projects go and how to really get them to implementation and to continue them beyond that funding that we give them, and what can we do to really get those solid feet underneath them. So hopefully these guys really agree with me on that, but that's what I'm hoping I'm doing when I'm out in the community. But that's also important when I'm talking to each of you that are sitting there thinking, should I send anything in? Is my proposal worthy? Call me. Let's talk about it. Having done this now 8 times, well, 7 times with them, I kind of know what they're looking for, and I can give you some insights into where I think I see weaknesses and where I see strengths and where I think you should really emphasize something more or build something up because it's missing. So please don't ever think, oh my gosh, you see her newsletter? Like, she's really busy. I can't bother her. Bother me, because it will make your proposal that much stronger, and that's what I want to be able to present to our board, is the strongest proposals possible. So call me, email me, whatever. Let me know what questions you might have. So this year, we try to change this up a little bit so that every time you come, you're not listening to every single proposal that we've funded in the past, and so that it makes it a little bit more interesting, but also a little bit more insightful into what we are doing when we shut those doors and try to decide which of these proposals are we going to fund. So we're going to go through 3 of these concepts. This is really hard for me. Did you do that? Did I actually? Oh, wow. I'm really good. I changed that slide and didn't even know I changed it. It must have been like what I was punching around in here. But we're did you mention Goofy? All right. Oh, a couple of things I wanted to let you know, though, is that we are live streaming this. So if you really want to be on camera, turn around and face that way, back to that guy, and wave, say hi. Yeah, so that you can be on camera. But also, if you want to let others know and they want to hear about what's going on in this room right now, it's on Facebook. And so you can get to us at facebook.com/AllianceHF. Or you can do @AllianceHF, and you will be on there, and you can let others know to begin to watch us. So we want to be interactive today so that I'm not the only one up here, and we've got an audience poll. So get your cell phones out, It's the only time it's really legal for you to be looking at your cell phone. And you're going to text Alliance HF 251 to 22333. So you put in 22333 and then you put in the message as Alliance HF 251. You will get a message back saying that you've now entered. Right? Everybody got that? Everybody's ready? You're more than welcome to participate. I'd love to see what proposal you're turning in when we ask that question later on. All right, so what one word comes to mind when you think about innovation? Type in that one word and hit send. What one word comes to mind when you think about innovation? Fresh. Change. Fresh change. Timing. Is that you? Ooh, look, there's a bunch of them. Sustainability, creative, improve, hope, fun, fix, hope, value. Keep going, keep going. Scale. There's someone. Interrupter. Exciting. Revolutionary. Bold. Ingenuity. Creative and new seem to be some really popular ones because those come out the biggest and boldest. Efficiency, conversations. All right, very good. Okay, we have another one, don't we? Yep, we do. Okay, so just to give us an idea before we start into today, what topic area are you considering for an I2 proposal? And you can pick more than one. But you're going to text in A for access to health care, B for children, E for food security, C for direct health services, F for homeless. Look at that. Okay, access to health care, homeless, access to health care, homeless, food security, mental health, other children, not other children, but children, access to health care. All right. Looks like we've got a really good mix. And if you're looking at that and you're saying, wow, 20% of the people in this room are sending in one on access to health care, don't worry about it. Send it in anyway because we want to hear what your proposals are. It doesn't mean that there's a crowd sitting there in access to health care. Either way, we want to know about it. It's a really great way for us to learn about the needs of the community based on what you're seeing with the populations that you're serving. But it really looks like a great mix. I'm excited about this. Like I said, a proposal from every one of you. Now I know what you're doing. No, we don't have that access anyway. But, I just thought, maybe I'd throw it out there. Maybe. I'll call you. I know who you are. All right. Let's see if I can get to where I'm supposed to be now. All right. So we're going to start in with some of these presentations. Last year, we selected Interfaith Community Services with their Recovery and Wellness Center, which fills an important gap in the continuum of services. Whoops. Yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about now. Continuum of services available to the poor and the homeless. It is a cost-effective alternative to jails and hospitals. And I'd like to welcome up the CEO of Interfaith Community Services, Greg Angel.
Thank you, Nancy. It's great to be here and wonderful to talk about this project. This project comes from a critical unmet need we have in our community. So Interfaith Community Services is a social services agency in North San Diego County. There's a jail up in North County in the city of Vista. That jail last year had more than 9,000 bookings on drug and alcohol charges alone. 9,000, which sounds like a lot. And the way to think about it and conceptualize it is that means every hour of every day, somebody's booked into the Vista County Jail on a drug and alcohol charge. There's a preponderance of those individuals who are extremely low income. Many are homeless. And they're being routed to a inefficient system that spends a lot of money and doesn't address the root cause of why they're ending up in the jail. And that's actually the cheaper alternative of where folks end up. Where they more often end up are at the hospital emergency departments at Palomar and Tri-City Medical Center up in North County. The average homeless individual has 5 emergency department visits a year, costs almost $20,000 just in ED costs alone. With about 10,000 homeless people in our county, you rack up more than $50 million in really wasted money. And so what we did and what we are proposing to do is to simply reroute those dollars in a more effective way to address the root cause of what is landing people in jails and hospitals. And that's to provide treatment for substance use disorder and co-occurring behavioral health conditions. It's a simple concept that we all understand as whole person care. It's kind of old hat for us, right? But for the poor and the most vulnerable of our community, it's a completely foreign concept. And so Interfaith pitched a project to the Alliance to bring together a bunch of services that either don't exist now, or if they do, they're in far-flung stretches of the community with month-long waits. So we proposed a recovery and wellness center to offer detox and sobering services. There are a lot of treatment programs out there. Every single one of them requires 2 weeks of sobriety, or 2 days of sobriety, or a month of sobriety, believe it or not. And so for an individual who's on the streets and suffering from addiction, that ability to stay clean when you say, well, come back when you're clean and go hang out with your friends in the meantime, it doesn't work, right? So our Recovery and Wellness Center provides that service. It provides an alternative to jails and hospitals. And then it links to residential recovery. And it also provides a place for individuals who have already been to the hospital and who are exiting hospitals to come into our care. And it links all of these services together. They're expensive services, right? You have licensed clinical social workers, you have registered nurses, you have MDs, you have lots of interdisciplinary professionals providing this whole person care. We proposed the model as an expansion of a program we're already offering, our recuperative care for individuals exiting hospitals who are homeless. And what we found through that program is that we can actually pay for these services because of the amount of money hospitals are otherwise spending on these folks coming through their emergency departments week after week, month after month. And what we found from that is that we could take the revenue from that recuperative care model and pay for the part of this that there are very few funding sources for, the detox and sobering. So we have a business model that we believe will work, and thanks to the Alliance Healthcare Foundation, we have an investment to piece all of this together and to find a location to launch. We are in the process of finding that location in North County. We're also putting together a business model that started with reality where the expansion of Medicaid seemed like a sure thing and is now very uncertain. And thanks to the investment from the Alliance Healthcare Foundation, we've been able to put together an interdisciplinary team to operationalize a business model that will work either way. So we look forward to launching later this year or next year. For those of you considering applying, you're all considering, right? That's why you're here. I would encourage you to think about projects that you want to share, that you want others to hear about and consider investing in. Whether or not you get the $1 million, if you become a finalist, you'll have the chance to really hone your message. And as an agency that actually applied twice, we were not selected the previous year, but we were selected this last year. We found the message that we were able to put together as a part of the preparation, as a part of the pitch competition, extremely valuable. And we actually secured a very large gift the year we were not funded with the materials that were put together. So I think that's a real key for all of you to consider is, what do you want to share? And this can be a process to do that. We have a short video to really drive home what this project means. And so we have a testimonial from one of our veterans who came out of a hospital. He's a great example of somebody who our taxpayers, us, spent a lot of money on, and through the support of a project like this, we're able to help him rebuild his life, and we look forward to doing that for a whole lot more people with the support of the Alliance Healthcare Foundation.
Interfaith have affected my life in such a great way. It was a really hard transition to go from being homeless to having stable ability to just decide what you're going to eat one day and taking a bath, brushing your teeth. It's a big change. Getting out the military, I fell off a ladder. My back was messed up. I went through a divorce, and that caused me to become homeless the first time. And just dealing with everything on my own was really, really hard. Makes you feel like nothing's gonna work out. My life was very helpless. I didn't know which way to turn or which way to go. I didn't want to be on the streets anymore, and I was surprised to know that there's a place that was called Recuperative Care that was going to be able to help me to get off the streets, and Recuperative Care made me believe that they was going to be there for me until I could find a place, and they were. It changed my whole life. It feels good having my own space and being able to go for a walk with Max, and I have confidence now because of Interfaith, and I don't feel unsafe and I don't feel insecure because I still feel like I'm a part of Interfaith.
The success of Tracy shows that our programs work. With the help of the Alliance Healthcare Foundation, we'll be expanding to open a new recovery and wellness center this next year to help even more individuals like Tracy. But the reality is, on a daily basis, we need the support of the community in order to continue to help those who turn to us in their time of crisis. And so we look forward to partnering with ever more community members in our day-to-day work so that we can help people to help themselves.
So awesome. This is why we do this work, right? So I would like to invite Elizabeth Dreiser back up to the front so we can ask a couple of the questions that we have set up. And that is, so Elizabeth, thinking back to last year, I know.
That was a while.
Who knows what we did just as you were outside. Who can remember that far back? But as we think back to last year, tell us what you remember, which really was important to the board when they heard this proposal that stood out to them that said, yeah, this is the one we want to select this year.
Well, this hits the trifecta again, right? This is about better quality, more effective quality for these people. It is about increasing access, so we expect this to grow. We also think this is a model, so we look at this as the potential to be replicated, not just here, but throughout San Diego and Imperial County. And then it's about reduction of cost. So this is another way just to change what we're doing using resources that will create and pay dividends to our community, and particularly those in need.
Yeah, and I remember that part of that discussion was this so clearly filled a gap. You know, when you think about the people that are, if they're trying to access services and they're told, come back in a month when you've been sober for that long period of time, go back to the street and stay sober, right?
Right.
So, it definitely fills that gap.
Well, we had the story that we shared during the pitch of the individual, the veteran who we had worked with for months after his exit from the hospital, and he had housing lined up. He'd been homeless for 20 years. He was ready to take that next step, and then he got a terminal health diagnosis, and he said, screw it, and he went on a bender, and we had to exit him to the hospital. We lined everything up, and we had, his housing. We had a treatment program for him to enter into, and the hospital discharged him at 1:30 in the morning. And not their fault, right? Their job is not to connect people to housing. It's to help people with that thing that landed them in the hospital to begin with. But such an example of a need for a more effective whole person care system.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Elizabeth, even though this is a fairly new project and we're still working on finding that location and getting this open, what are you looking forward to seeing them accomplish through this program?
Well, in addition to your current plans, we really look forward to seeing this model emulated. We see that this makes such good sense. So this is how innovation often works, is that there's a spark. You guys came up with the framework, and we hope that it will absolutely serve the population that your first center will serve, and we really hope that this will spread. I think if we were to say, what we feel we are able to do and really leverage. We have limited resources as an organization also. I mean, I know that we have an endowment, but really there's so much need for us to do things. And so the best scenario is if we use dollars in the system really wisely and have those dollars expand to really meet the human needs.
Thank you. We have time for one audience question for either Elizabeth or Greg. Do we have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Healy.
Good question. So we project the center will have an operating budget annually of about $2.5 million. The $1 million is to help with the project development. Initially, we expected it being mostly staff to get it up and running while we lined up all the funding pieces. Because one of the difficulties is we have about 12 different funding streams that need to make this center financially sustainable, and they won't all come online at the same time. Since the project was funded, however, some of those funding streams have changed, and so we've actually spent some of the money on some consultants to help us expand the options for that. And we expect that once we get those funding streams online, actually the funding will go very little to direct services and really will just help with project preparation.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, the next project that you're going to hear from is with Solutions for Change. They have me doing way too many things up here. It's just like this little mind, trying to keep up with all of that. Hope I'm doing okay. Anyway, so Solutions for Change is an effort to provide soft job skills for their clients. They created an aquaponics farm to grow organic baby greens. And the outcome of this production is a potentially viable social enterprise. So I'm welcoming Chris Megison, who is the CEO of Solutions for Change, to tell us more about it.
Good morning. I'm here to give a brief and executive overview on the challenges and lessons learned here of the Alliance Healthcare funded Solutions Farms. The first thing that we get is we think about here is as an innovator trying to do this in 3 minutes really puts us outside of our comfort zone, which you should get used to if you go forward here with your dream. First, I want to say that most of what you'll see and hear here on Solutions Farms will resonate more with the crazy ones in the audience here, the way out there dreamers, the ones that are the disruptors, and the ones that have a really high risk tolerance. So, us nonprofit leaders, we have to solve the world's toughest problems with like rubber bands and bubble gum. We're expected to do that, make it look easy. But because of investors like the Alliance Healthcare Foundation, we're actually able to get some wind underneath our sails here to where we can solve these things, maybe without the bubble gum and with just the rubber bands. Now, I didn't one day wake up and say, hey, I want to be a farmer, although my wife would probably argue with me on that one. But I did wake up many times in the middle of the night and I asked myself, what could I do to have a bigger and bolder impact on my mission? And in Solutions' case, that mission is about delivering permanent solutions to homeless families through social enterprise. So fortunately, the Alliance was not afraid of crazy, although Nancy's looked at me funny a couple of times, or the concept of social enterprise, which, as you know, with social enterprise, it's delivering our services, our impact with whatever our mission is, in a way that drives revenue back into the social mission that will help underwrite those that you serve or the problems that you solve. So how can we serve our people better while engaging them in something big and purposeful, something that can also have a big impact perhaps on other things outside of our mission? So for me, one of the challenges was, how do I make my idea all about the mission, 100% about the mission, while also seamlessly and naturally positively impacting other health, social, and environmental issues or causes. In other words, one of the things I had to really force myself to do is don't mission creep, right? You know what that is. Just for the wheelbarrow of cash that you might feel like comes from an investment like $1 million innovation grant. It's just not worth it. Now, as you'll see in our video, the farm is all about serving our mission of growing lives, but it also delivers huge on other big problems related to health, related to the environment, and water savings, food security or insecurity, and jobs, all while generating revenue to make us more sustainable as an organization. There are many other challenges and lessons learned, such as timing your dream to unfold, this pesky little thing called reality and its sidekick, Murphy, and contractor selection and a lot of other things. But you'll have to wait to hear more about that. Come to our farm and meet my fish, and I'll share more of some of those challenges and lessons, so I'll be happy to do that. So again, 2 fins up to all the crazy ones out there. Thank you.
Lettuce, organic lettuce, 10 different varieties, and now available to more North County school children, some 50,000 in 4 districts. Friday morning at Solutions Farms, which uses a growing process called aquaponics to produce healthy produce for students, had its grand reopening after a grant-funded $1 million expansion of its greenhouse, making it the largest organic aquaponics farm in the western U.S. These 2 bays represent the original area, roughly 5,000 square feet. Take a look, 22,000 square feet now. Aquaponics, soilless farming using fish waste in lieu of traditional chemical fertilizers. In the case here, waste from 1,700 tilapia. But there's more going on than healthy produce for children. Solutions Farms is part of a North County organization called Solutions for Change, a longtime organization dedicated to helping homeless families. And yes, clients are part of the farm's workforce. As Farms Director Chris Cochran told us, basic lessons here in getting out of homelessness and re-entering society. People working with each other.
They plant the seeds, they transplant the plants, they harvest the plants, they deliver the plants, and many of their children are actually in the school systems.
They include Amber Gann, mother of 3 children.
To me, it's not about growing the lettuce. It's not about, anything like that. It's about growing people. It's about changing lives, being a support, and guiding people that have been in my situation before.
I like to say here at Solutions Farms, we're not just farming tilapia and growing lettuce, but we grow lives, we grow dreams, aspirations, and hope, and people. And it's a wonderful thing, and it's really incredible to see that happen.
In Vista, Ed Lenderman, KUSI.
That's so awesome. If you do go out and visit the farm, there's 2 things I want to let you know. One is that they do not feed you to the fish, and there is no fish feeding frenzy. That's such an incredible part of that video. And then second, if you go at the right time, if you time it just right, it's harvest time, and you get the freshest baby organic greens that you've ever had, and it's worth the trip. So anyway, as you can see, we've welcomed up to the front now our board trustee, Dr. Joe Ramsdell, who is also the chair of our program committee. So Joe, I'm going to ask you the same questions that I asked Elizabeth, remembering back to this is a long memory trip back, right? But when we first heard the proposal from Solutions for Change, what were the concepts and the themes in that proposal that the board selected them for this awardee?
Don't worry, it's short-term memory that goes first. Before I start, though, I want to thank everybody in the room for what you're doing. Regardless of whether you apply, regardless of whether we give you a penny, what you're doing is important. And we all know that the whole board appreciates what you're doing. The other thing is it's strange to be on a bar stool without a martini in my hand. I'll keep going. When I was thinking about this, I was trying to put myself in your place and decide what would be the most useful information that I think I could give you. And I think that the one memory I have from our deliberations was your passion. He believed in what he was doing. And so I think that when you're making a pitch or when you're putting together a proposal, a belief in what you're doing, a rationale and a belief is really important. And I think that's something I'd like to see. And you try to get a feel. That's important because, as Nancy has pointed out, when you get a grant from us, it's a partnership, whether you like it or not sometimes. But much of the risk of innovation is failure, and Elizabeth addressed that in her original notes. And so what we try to do is we want to take that gamble, but we want it to succeed. So we want to work with you and try to utilize the expertise on the board without sounding too pompous about it. I mean, I think it's an interesting group of people to work with to make it work. And I think that's been kind of the legacy of all our grants. The other thing, timing is everything in life, as in comedy. And what we try to think about is is this something that is the right time? And sometimes what we're working with people over a period of time with is a matter of keeping it alive until it is the right time. And we've seen this with a couple of our projects. Getting back specifically to solutions, the whole idea of social enterprise is something that we're really trying to get more and more involved in terms of our loans programs and other things. And this seemed like such a neat way to tie a social enterprise and a business into really touching people's lives. The stretch was, how does this fit with our mission? And this is another point I'd like to make, and incidentally, Nancy, have a hook because I can go on for hours. But everybody in this room is doing something really important. And every proposal we get is really good. In fact, every proposal that doesn't make it is really important. How does it relate to our mission? And how does it relate to its likelihood of succeeding in the context of our mission is also very important. And I think that here we were able to make it fit with health and wellness, and certainly the fact that this is good grub for the kids in school was really important, as well as the more we can keep people off the streets and into a good, stable environment, the healthier they're going to be. And I point that out because that's one of the real debate points in the selection process is how well does this comply with our mission? And so if you're worrying about that, talk to Nancy. I'm not sure that we have a consistent answer from year to year or even from minute to minute or from board member to board member. But I think that somehow that we align the mission of the proposals we fund with our primary mission, and I think that working that out is going to be important to your proposal.
Yeah, another thing that that Joe reminded me of is that part of the conversation was also at the time that this came forward to us, we were in a serious drought. And we were looking at this going, wow, this is a way to grow organic baby greens, with using less water, with using less electricity. Then we were thinking, wow, if this drought continues, this is the way farming may look in the future. And so that was another timing issue, I think, that was also built into this proposal, and not one that was probably top of mind to you when you were thinking about it. But
90% less water.
Yeah, exactly. 90% less water in this project. So that's one of the timing issues. Now that you see where they're at, now that you see that they've expanded to this 22,000 square feet and producing 120,000 pounds of produce on an annual basis, what are you excited to see them accomplish next?
Well, I feel like we're stockholders, so I'm looking for those dividends.
I'll bring you some organic baby greens next time.
I think that basically the growth of this particular project, but also the spread of this whole concept of a social enterprise and looking at how you can touch individual people's lives and move the process along. And I think that's really what is exciting in terms of where you guys are going, I hope.
Great, thank you. We have time for one audience question. Do you want to know like when the growing season is, when they harvest, when you should go out to visit? Yeah, John.
So if you had another $1 million, what would be your next project?
Well, I think the question that Joe was asking on the dividends was the other kind of green, the money. But I think that right now, if I had it, I'd probably hang on to it for a little bit of time in order to get to that. This is a proofing concept that's happened, but this is year 1, month 3 of the idea, really, because it took us this long to build it out. So I know everybody wants to see a lot of green. We're going to give 120,000 pounds of that green to 20 or 30,000 school kids in 4 school districts up there, which we're super excited about. But the other kind of green will take a little bit of time to get to profitability. We look at, we think in year 2. And so at that point, I'd take the $1 million and see if I could finagle some land out of Greg and build another one in Escondido.
Great. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Chris. I brought my lovely assistant, Michelle, our program officer, Michelle Silverthorne. I said, okay, I'm handling too many things at one time, and so please take over the clicker for me. So now we know that this gets moved along. The next project that we're going to hear from is one of the most interesting ones, I think, that I've been involved with, not only because of the concept, but also the process. And I just want to describe a little bit about this process because it tells you about our partnership. It tells you a little bit about the thinking on the part of the board, and it tells you about where this can really head. With this particular project, now I got hired in August of 2011. This project had already presented to the board in July of 2011. And when I came on board, they said, we have this project. We think there's something there, but we don't know exactly what it is. So could you talk to them and see what you think and let us know? And so day 1, I get to go and talk to the group that was presenting something that they were calling the Community Information Exchange. And this was a group of stakeholders in the homeless field that said, you know what, if we could exchange information and find out what's going on with the people that we're trying to serve, if we could know where they've been and the services that they've been, and if we could connect that to the doctor's office so the doctor doesn't release them to the streets or to the wrong program, or another case manager where it starts all over again, or they're calling around trying to find where's availability, where can we put this person, what program, we could save a whole lot of time and money if we could develop this system. So it was a concept. It was a great idea that a group of people had come up with. And the board said, okay, we need to know a little bit more. Here's some money. Go do a really in-depth business plan and come back to us. And they did that. And then we said, okay, this has some oomph behind it now. You guys are really all well-meaning, but what's going to happen when this gets launched? Are you all on board? Are you all committed? Why don't you build an infrastructure? Why don't you get a real board? Why don't you get somebody that's the leader of this? As you heard Joe talk about, the leader is really important. They wanted to see who's going to be leading this effort. We had one come on board, we went to a second one, and that was the one that really got this launched. But that's a part of our partnership, but it's also a part of the commitment of the board when they see a concept that they really want to get some legs under it and get it going and get it moving. This was one that when it came to us, this has always been a $1 million innovation initiative. They came to us with a budget over $3 million. And we're sitting there going, this is a bunch of well-meaning people that have no real leader that's been identified to champion this, that want us to commit to $3 million when it's $1 million. Who are these people, right? Who are they? That's part of what Chris was talking about. You got to be just a little bit crazy too, so you got to come forward with this great idea. They had the passion, and we stood behind them. And this has now become the largest project that we've ever funded, up to $3.4 million over the course of the years since 2011. So you never know where it's going to go. You never know what it's going to look like, and we hope that it gets to where it is today. See if I covered everything I thought I was going to cover in that. But, you know, the other thing that I also wanted to say is that one of the things you'll also hear, and you heard it from Elizabeth, is we want to know what the real cost of this project is. They don't want to see a project that comes in at $999,999 or hits $1 million exactly on the head, right? Something's not right. You either built it up to get it there, or you're not telling us all of the costs. Or if you don't know, you need to let us know that you don't know. But we really do want to know what your true budget is, because if we fund it, we want to know what we're getting into. Part of that getting into with you may be helping you to find other funders. It may not be us. We may not be the project that funds you to $3.4 million. But we may be the partner that you need to try to get other funders on board to help support your project. So in that way, you know, give us your true budget, and I can't say that enough. So we're going to now bring up John Ohanian, who is the CEO of 211 San Diego. And this is what, it started out on its own. It started out as this group of stakeholders. It went off and formed its own 501c3 as the Community Information Exchange. It grew, it got implemented, and now 211 saw that as an opportunity to bring it in and make it even more. So, John.
Crazy. We get called that a lot. I'm going to take it as a compliment. So now that you I think you have a little bit of understanding, I put my slide deck together because we're in the process of, again, like Nancy mentioned, not just going to Alliance Healthcare Foundation, but really going to the greater community and the nation, because I think this crazy idea is something that is wanting to be explored elsewhere. And I would say also, you know, Nancy mentioned the evolution of this. The second executive director that we brought on board when I was on the board of the Community Information Exchange, Scott Beckler-Levine, who really came from that concept, proved the concept, and then started looking at the evolution of where 211 was going and where CIE was going, and it took a leadership role to kind of say, you know what, we need to bring these two together. And I think that's also something that we don't talk a lot about, because we end up in our modes of our organization. And I think when we have that type of leadership, that's how change can happen as well. So the other piece that I'll say is, it's not easy having a big investor behind you, because we don't have all the answers. We're doing something that hasn't been done before, and it can be scary. You kind of want to go into the funding meeting and say, we've got it all solved, here's the $1 million budget, can you? And I think the dialogue, they don't expect that from you. And I think the more that we can go in, I think it's how I work with my team as well, is don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Let's have a dialogue. And I think that's the culture of the Alliance Healthcare Foundation. That's what we've experienced of it. So some of these slides real quick, I know I only have 3 minutes. They knew that I was going to do it in 3 minutes, but is really what we're studying, because 211 for so long has been an information referral business. I usually have a Nerf gun, but they told me I couldn't have that because someone could get hit. Tell me what you're going through as a client. They call in, we spend 10 minutes, we assess the situation, and we give them a referral, and we shoot the Nerf gun, we say, here's your referral, good luck. And in a lot of cases, I think a lot of us end up in that situation because we want to know what happens. We want to know what happens after we spend time and energy. And a person like Tracy that Greg was talking about, how many other programs was he in? And did any other organization work with that individual over the time? And would that have been valuable for Greg to know? And so when I look at someone like Greg who's doing work in that community, I think, what about the other Gregs that are out there, the other interfaith, the other organizations that are out there serving that same client? And what we're finding at 211 is we're really a healthcare organization. We're not only a social service organization. So what we're doing is we're learning a lot. So our executive vice president bought about 20 copies of this book and said, let's look at the changing paradox. So in the US, we spend 2.5 times what other countries spend on healthcare, yet we're one of the least healthy nations. And most of you in the room who work in social services know that that's a precursor. Other countries spend twice on social services what we spend in the country. So some interesting things to think about. So we know what goes into someone's health. We know that access to food is a precursor for longevity for individuals and for families. Not only, I saw a really interesting quote the other day is, should we worry that kids don't have a meal so that they can study better? Or should we worry that kids don't have a meal? You know, and let's think about it at that level. Is education's one thing, but just humanity in another concept. So that really kind of came from the concept of a community information exchange, a way to take, you know, in 2-on-1 land, we work with about 6,000 programs and services here in San Diego. That's a lot of great programs, a resource-rich community that's doing a lot of great work, but we're not sharing information about what's going on with individual clients. So when Elizabeth talks about reducing the cost, we know that this is a sweet spot for all of us to gain. And we're really proud that we've grown to over 23 Trust Network partners. These are organizations and leaders that have said, I'm in. Because it's one thing to be a leader and say, well, that sounds great, but these are my clients. I don't know how that's going to affect me and my funding. But it's other leaders that are coming together saying, we want to see this happen. And I'm talking about Tracy for a minute because in the veteran space, we're really excited because it's allowed us to incubate a new program called SD United. And it's going to be a national platform for veterans, because veterans move around the country, and to be able to see their record and share it. So we have veteran organizations that are already coordinating their case management on a virtual network that was launched a few months ago. That really came from years and years and years of building this culture of information sharing that really started back in 2011 with the launch of this grant. And the first year results were really astounding. For those Trust Network partners that were sharing client information, we saw a 26% reduction in emergency room transports from those clients from the prior year. And in some cases, and the data's up there, knows better than me, 38% reduction in individuals that were in some type of housing situation moving to homelessness. So if we can drop people moving into the homeless situation by 38% just by a pilot, imagine what we could do when we scale this project. And I think that's really when it became noticeable that this was not just a project that needed $1 million influx, but it needed a runway. It needed a way to get to scale. And so if you can see the projections, we're ahead of our projection right now. We're trying to hit about 35 to 37,000 clients by the end of 2017. A short time away. Cami, we ready? But our real goal is to get to 250,000 and 500,000 clients. Because when you're in an agency and you want to ping the exchange to say, Joe just walked in my office, I want to see if he's getting services elsewhere. If you get information back, that service is now a valuable service. We need to get to scale so we can help more people. So what we're doing is we're basically taking the pilot of CIE and rolling it into what we see as next generation 2-on-1, which we're right now calling 360-degree community coordination. But we're looking for other names because it matters to us that it means something to the participants in there about what this tool is. But really what we're excited about is what it's going to allow us to do. We've contracted with Salesforce, which is an enterprise level system that can take the technology that was incubated into something that can be used community-wide. And so think about a feedback loop so that when we make a referral to Greg at Interfaith, he's going to tell us, I'm going to accept this client, I'm going to serve that client within this time period, or I can't help this client, so that we can get back to that client and find out what's going on and what other services might be out there. And it's also going to create a longitudinal record so that we can all see the history. And when we talk about the health paradox, we're really excited because if we can all speak a common language of what it means to be vulnerable for housing or vulnerable for food, and we can all share that, we can have a dashboard that we can all look at to see where people are, so that when one agency picks up a client, we can see where they've been, but also where we think they're classified. And I think that's something that's being done in the health world, and in the social service world, it's pretty new. And lastly, when we talk about 2-on-1's mission, it's not only to connect people to services, it's to use that data and identify service gaps and trends in our community, something that funders and community leaders are looking for. Well, I can't just look at 2-on-1 data, and we just can't look at Greg's data. We need community-wide data to see, are we making a difference? Are we moving the needle, not only on an individual, but on a neighborhood and things of that nature? So the potential is really exciting. I think that's why we're really excited about this project. We're excited to bring other foundations and get the recognition, because we know for a fact this is being done in very few communities of this level. In San Diego County, we're lucky to have a County of San Diego with Live Well San Diego, which is building a similar exchange for county programs. And we have San Diego Health Connect, which is doing a similar, actually has health information exchange being done as well. So at a regional level, we're connecting social and health services, and we're really excited about where it's going to go. So I think that's 5.5 minutes. I know. Save it for the Q&A.
Go ahead.
Go one more. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's a video. We have a great video. Karis isn't here.
I am the Director of Health and Partner Integration, specifically around health and helping the internal external partnerships kind of build into our service design here at 211. What's really important and what's great about working here at 211 is that it's a connection center. So we're really about working with the community, creating that linkage. So we actually don't provide a lot of direct services here at 211. We help people navigate to the right spot. And so we work with community partners to basically identify what they can provide and what our clients need, and we help to make sure that they get connected with those services. I work at 211 because I am passionate not only about health and education and public health, but also about how that impacts the community. And I really think that what we've been able to create here is really looking at the social side of what health does to a person, and that really a lot of it has to do with where you live and where you work and what you have access to that really impact what your health is like. And so I work at 211 because I'm passionate about making those things happen and helping our community.
It's always hard to see yourself on the big screen, right? So I'd like to welcome up our board trustee, Jeffrey Willman, who's also the chair of our audit committee. All right, thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
So Jeffrey, you've been sitting here, you've heard the two questions. I'm going to start with the first one. Thinking back, back to 2011, what was it about that concept that you thought the board was really engaged in and really wanted to fund this particular project?
Well, first I'd like to say that I've with the last name Willman, I've always ended up being one of the last people to come up and talk. So I by default end up having to remember the these efforts from years ago as we were getting started. So the first thing I'd say is, if you're thinking about submitting an application or a grant, I'd say hit send, call Nancy. I refer people to do that all the time. If you think we have it all wired, that we've got this down and we've been, we're experts in it, are you kidding me? Could you imagine somebody coming and saying, hey, we have a budget for a concept, by the way, no entity, no leader, and we want $3.5 million, and we'd like you to put in $1 million to support the effort. So you've got a bunch of very passionate people sitting around a room, talking about funding an idea, right? That you had starting at a dinner table somewhere in your living room, or having a Starbucks coffee or something. So it's really one of the favorite days of my year to get to see the great work you guys do in the community and have those things highlighted. We've seen applicants come year over year, and it's fun to see them evolve over time. But in particular, the fun part of this particular grant was that it was a bunch of people coming together behind an idea, a concept, and sharing information. And that information helps enhance access. It's going to ideally reduce cost, keep people out of the emergency rooms potentially. If you send somebody home from the ER, just like we were speaking about this gentleman earlier, if you know what those social impacts or social effects are, that's going to change how you send them home and the results you'll receive. So it's been, 6 years or 7 years? But
2011.
Yep.
Very good, thank you. So now that you see, they've made tons of progress from that initial concept that they came to us with, and where they're headed now, what are you most excited to see them accomplish now?
I want to see them touch as many of these high-risk fringe people as possible, and I think the numbers range from 10,000 and on, but there are about 2,500 or so that are actively chronically homeless that need the most attention. The top 5% of our population that utilizes healthcare services actually spends about 50% of the money. So if we can touch even a fraction of those, we can substantially impact the dollars that are spent in the community and better utilize them. And this is a great movement in that direction. So I'd love to see CIE touch as many of that 10,000 population as possible.
Great, thank you. And an audience question. Do you have a question for either Jeffrey or John? Yes.
How did you manage HIPAA requirements?
So the question is,
it's the number one question I get is, how do you manage HIPAA? And I'll tell you, my first response anytime someone mentions HIPAA is, it's interesting in the space. We were at the Health Information Management Conference, 40,000 health IT professionals talking about exchanging information. And it's interesting because their direction is continuing to push wanting social service information. And I always say people try to hide behind HIPAA. It's almost a reason not to do something. And it's funny because HIPAA was created for the purpose of sharing information. But it's so funny how that context is, right? Because just even based on fear. So we're following HIPAA. San Diego Health Connect, which is the Health Information Exchange, we hired their CISO. We hired their privacy and security officer. We are now bringing on board a part-time chief medical officer as well, because the cross-section of when you're talking about someone's social well-being and their health well-being and the information that needs to be there to help all of you, help that client, it's a fine line. And so our goal is let's follow HIPAA, let's set the standard for how we do that exchange of information. Did that answer your question? Sort of. So, sort of is probably the answer right now. But we're continuing. I mean, we're in I think one of the interesting parts about this is it's hard being the first out the gate. There's not a lot of best practices out there. If you look at the national coordinator, they're trying to find out what the standards are going to be for social determinants of health. We're talking about it, but there isn't a common language. There isn't a common practice. The greatest part for us is we do know social services. So while social determinants of health might only be 7 categories for one organization, it may be 20 for us because we dig into utility assistance at a specific level. It's not just financial assistance. All of you know who work in social services, it's not just financial support. There's so many subcategories of it. So I see us as leading that effort and having a community-wide, and if we can get San Diego County on board with some standards, I think then we can be a great leader to kind of advise the country. Sure. So the systems that we put in place do have rights, user rights. A big part of this, and I talked about it last year when we talked about the project, is it's not a technology project in a lot of ways. Yes, technology supports it, but it's a behavior change. It's not only how 2-on-1 is now going to answer a call and work with a client now that we have more information. It's these trust network partners. What training and onboarding are they going to have of their staff? So it's a community. When we talk about an ecosystem that we're creating, it's from, yes, security and technology, but I think the biggest thing is culture and leadership and change management, organizational change.
Great. Thank you very much, John and Jeffrey. So because y'all have been sitting here for a while, get out your cell phones. We're going to do another poll. We've gone through all of the presentations, and we've given you a lot of information so far, but let us know, based on what you have heard, are you going to amend your proposal? Text A for yes, B for no, C for not sure. 100% of you are not ready to submit? No, keep going. Okay, so you've got A is yes, B is no, C is not sure, D is not ready to submit. 38% of you say you are going to make a change. 39% of you, 41, it's all changing. Y'all can see it's changing. I don't need to read the numbers. Do what? Oh, yeah. Oh, you can vote twice. Did you know that? We were trying. All right. So 41% of you are not ready to submit. Y'all are the ones that need to call me. Right? Y'all are the ones that should call me or email me or something so that we can get talking about it, so we can get you ready to submit, because every single one of you, right, are going to submit a proposal. All right. Thank you very much. I think we're doing another one later, a couple questions more, so don't put those cell phones too far away. But we're going to talk a little bit more now about some of the things that, kind of the broader concepts. You've heard some of them here now, but I want to kind of pull them all together for you in terms of the hows and the whys. One of the things that is really important, and you heard it on all 3 of the presentations, is we're looking for something that's going to be big enough to make a change in the system. It's not maintaining the status quo. It really is saying that we need to be able to share information information in a more effective, efficient way. We need to be able to get people off the streets in a way that really serves their needs and gets them into services. That changes the system because there's nothing that's out there right now for them, and what is out there isn't working. And it's also about how do we get occupational kind of workforce development types of skill sets built into the people that need to be able to find jobs to enable to them to end their homelessness, as well as to produce these, why am I having trouble with my words, we don't know, but it's to produce these organic baby greens so that school children who don't have access to healthy foods can get the healthiest of foods. And one of Chris's favorite stories that he didn't get to tell was that these kids, when they taste them, they say, I want seconds. How many times do you hear school kids say, I want more lettuce? It doesn't happen until you get these fresh organic baby greens and have them in their hands. So it's about that systems change. If you look at any of these other proposals that we have funded in the past, you will also see that they were really looking at how they're going to make these bigger systems changes happen. We've talked a little bit about some of the target populations. Our 4 target populations, 2 of them are very broad. Under 250% of poverty, and those who are uninsured and underinsured. Now that definition is certainly changing, and it may change again, but it's still the population that we care about. There are also 2 very vulnerable populations, children and the homeless. So how are you impacting those populations in some way, shape, or form in the systems change proposal that you're bringing forward to us? Joe talked about mission alignment. It's very huge. But our mission also is very broad to advance health and wellness. So there's a lot that can fit in there, but there's also not a lot that doesn't fit in there. So really trying to become aligned with our particular mission and what we're trying to accomplish, we can be better partners with you. Geographic, we serve in San Diego and Imperial counties. So this proposal, you need to impact people that live in one or both of those counties. It could be an organization outside of San Diego or Imperial counties, but the impact has to be here. We want to have the impact on the people that live here. You also heard Elizabeth talk a lot about the cost, the quality, and the capacity. So we want to try and reduce costs. We know there is no new money coming into the field, right? We know that. And in fact, we know it might be getting cut. So what are you doing now to do things that are going to change the system in such a way that you can reduce costs, or that you're trying to improve capacity? Sometimes this allows you to do more, like what Greg is doing, to do more with the people that you're trying to serve, or you're trying to improve the quality of the care or the access that they have. Any one of those, all 3 of them is better. It also prepares for the future by doing something different. All of these proposals that you heard today are the ones that are looking to the future and what can we do and change what's happening in the future. That's actually when the board was thinking about the Innovation Initiative, what got them thinking about that. It's almost amusing, but in 2010, we were hearing about the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. It's coming down the pike. We were hearing in the community, this is going to inundate us. We are not ready. We don't have the capacity. People are going to be coming in who haven't had health care. They're going to be sicker. It is really going to impact us. And we said, here's $1 million. Tell us what you want to do to get ready for 2014, back in 2010. That's where a lot of this kind of concept and thought process came from. That's what we're looking for now. What are you doing now to prepare for what might happen in the future? And how is this proposal and process going to get you there? There's a lot that we also talked about. You heard a lot of numbers get tossed out there. Data is really important. Although we will fund on a concept, we also want to know what is the data. How do you know it's really a problem? Who's not getting served? How big is that? You know, when you can talk about the number of people that are incarcerated or taken to jail based on drug and alcohol, that's a huge number. We now know what the potential market is, right, that we could be reaching. So anytime you have data to support your idea, that's also important. But we also recognize, also as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, and Joe, I think everybody's kind of talked about this, is that not all of the projects are successful. And that's okay. It's not that we're expecting failure, but it's that we learn along the way, that what's going on. We've learned so much from the projects that didn't come to fruition. We've learned also from those that came to fruition, but they catalyzed something bigger, and therefore they were no longer needed. And that's fine, because it makes that systems change happen in whatever form that might be. So, we're okay when things, well, we're not really okay. We don't really like it when they don't succeed, but we understand that that's part of the risk that we take. And that's something that I say out in the community that I love about this board, is that they are risk takers. They will look at something and they will fund a concept. So just know that that's always something that we're looking for. These are very important concepts for you to have built into your proposal. All righty. So I'm going to now, this is where I go into the actual application, right? So I'm going to go into and let you know, when you go online to fill out your proposal, when you're sitting there thinking about what you need to do and add into to be ready, I'm going to go through the application. Now there's some really dry stuff right at the beginning, so we've got to, but I want to let you know that the qualifications for you to be able to apply is that you need to partner with an organization here in San Diego or Imperial counties if you're not already based here. As I said, you could be outside of it, but we want it to happen here. And we found in some of our other proposals or the projects that we funded, you have to have a champion who is local. You have to have somebody that have their feet on the ground right here that can say, this is important and this is why I'm behind it, even if your headquarters are outside of the two counties. If you're not a 501c3, you need to find a fiscal intermediary who can serve as your 501c3. We're willing to work with you, even if you're not, but you do have to have that fiscal intermediary. We are looking for this to be fully implemented in 3 years. As you can see, we will stick with you and continue to push as long as it looks like there is forward progress being made. But in your proposal, show us your path. Show us the pathway to getting to implementation. We also like to see an evaluation component. How do you know what you're doing is really having an impact? How do you know you're on the right track? What are your milestones? How are you going to evaluate that you're actually making the progress and going in the direction that you hope you're going? As you can see in some of these projects, they take some twists and they take some turns, but you still need to see if you've got to know that pathway coming into it. And then be innovative. And I am always talking to people about the difference between being creative and being innovative. There are a lot of people that will take a current idea that's already out there and apply it to what they're already doing, what they're doing, and that's creative. Innovative is taking an idea that you're freshly developing, that you're not really sure about, that makes you a little bit crazy, but that also puts you on a path to make the systems change. That's innovation. That's what we're looking for in our proposals. And if you still have a question about that, what I say, call me or email me and we can talk about it so I can tell you what you need to do to maybe beef that up. All right. This is all the dry stuff I'm going to go through. I'm not going to read this to you, but it's all of the demographic information that we need to have with regard to your organization. We need to know some of your financial information will be also asked of you. I know some of y'all are taking pictures of these, so I'm going to maybe go a little bit slower than just jumping through them. We also are looking at the target populations. As I identified them earlier, you're going to need to know what kinds of numbers are you looking to target in each of these areas, or one of these areas, or two or more. We also want to know what the makeup of that population looks like. So you're going to be telling us about gender, ethnicity, age range, and then the total number of people that you expect to serve, preferably unduplicated. We also want to know in what region. As I said, we fund in both counties, in San Diego and Imperial. So are you going to hit one area and go deep into that area? Are you going to try to go across and be broad? You'll also be talking about in the proposal, if you're trying to scale, you're going to start someplace small because that's the best way to test a project, and then tweak it and adjust it and continue to expand it. So now we're into the 8 qualifying questions. These are the ones that you really need to understand what we're looking for, and so that you answer these questions. And I'll tell you that the characters size is limited because we want you to get as concise and precise as possible. So the first question is, oh, look at that, I'm on question 3 already, is the problem to be addressed. What is it that you're seeing out there that's impacting the people that you're serving that is a problem? You really do have to start there in terms of what is the problem that you're trying to solve. Indicate how you even know it's a problem. Do you have data here that can help us identify and understand what the size of the problem is or what the problem really is? And why would people use you? Just because you come up with a brilliant idea doesn't mean that people will see you as the place they need to go for that particular service or that particular project that you're developing. So tell us, why you? Why is that important? The second question, tell us a little bit more about your project, specifically about the project that you're identifying. So you've told us the problem, here's the problem, and here's what you're going to do about it. What is the health impact? What are your goals? What are your milestones? How do you know how your accomplishments are happening along the way? And if at all possible, what is your market analysis? Whether you have the data that you were talking about before that identifies the problem, but who else do you know is out there in the market doing the same thing? Or what would you do with competition should it arise? The third one are the key elements of innovation. What is it that makes this innovative? What is it that you're not just taking some other idea and applying it here, but what makes this innovative in your eyes? And again, this is another area where we can talk about it in terms of what is innovation. But what is it that you're trying to do to disrupt the system so that you can better serve the people you're trying to reach and address the problem that you identified? The fourth question, I don't know how much more I can talk about cost, quality, and capacity, but this is where you're going to tell us more about how you're impacting this. How are you reducing costs? How are you improving the quality of the care or the service? Or how are you impacting capacity? Number 5. Okay, so you heard this also in terms of, and you saw it right in front of you, how important leadership is. I have seen the board be deciding between two proposals and come to the conclusion that this leader is not going to let this project go. This leader is passionate about the work that they're doing. But it's not always that one person. Sometimes it's the team. Sometimes your proposal is such that you need a team of people to be able to put together all of the pieces that need to happen. What was interesting about working with Chris is very passionate. His leadership, when he did his proposal, everybody was like, he's not letting that one go. He is going to be behind that forever. But when he got into it, what he realized is he ended up hiring somebody who was an aquaponics expert, world-renowned expert in aquaponics. That was a part of the team that he needed. And that's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking for. Do you have all of those pieces? Do you know what you don't have? And identify that for us. And about this time, you're probably like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get all of that into those little spaces? I need more space. I'm really stressing out here. And so you see what we gave you when you came in? You have these coloring books. So about this time, before you start your application, you might want to have this next to you. And about now, take it out and color a picture. It'll help you breathe. It'll help you calm down. It'll help you be less stressed. And then you can move on. Okay? So we will move on. So then you want to start talking, oh, that's a good sense. Do this before this one. Yeah, definitely. When you start talking about your sustainability, I can tell you that even when the finalists end up working with our business plan consultant, this is an area that we still struggle with. How, after that $1 million, other than coming back to us and asking us for more money or going out and looking for more money, how are you going to get this project to sustainability? How do we know that this systems change is actually going to be a systems change that sticks, that becomes institutionalized, whether it's within your own organization and the work that you're doing, as what Chris was talking about, making it a social enterprise, but also when it's out there and others see that what it is, there's going to be so many more people that want to do that, they want to join on board with you, and they're going to help to sustain this and really ingrain it into the community. So that's the kind of message that we want to have in terms of your sustainability plan. Sometimes it's looking at how much is it going to cost to get you to start up. You heard that with Greg, right? How much is it going to cost you to get started? And then how much is it going to take you to really get implementation fully productive? As Chris talked about, revenue stream might start up really in the second year. It might go to the third year, but there's a plan for getting there. The next question is planning to scale the project. As we talked about it when we first started off with Chris, one school district. How are you going to get it to more school districts, right? How are you going to scale that? If you're going to start in central San Diego, how are you going to get broader than that? If you're really aggressive and you're talking about all of San Diego County, and it's such a good thing that you're doing, how is this going to scale to other areas? Is it something that could be? And it doesn't mean that you, the organization, has to do it. I know we've talked about that with Greg. You don't have to be the one, but how are you going to impart the insights and the lessons learned to others so that they can make it happen in their area as well? Oh, budget. Okay. You might want to get that coloring book out again. But the budget is something that we also want to see. And again, I can't stress enough the true budget. What is it really going to cost you to get this to implementation and to fruition so that we can see what that pathway is going to look like? Are you going to need to have other sources of funding, or do you have them currently? Because you've been talking up your project so much, there are others that are also on board. And then, that's it. You're done. Hit send. You're done. Color another picture. Whatever it is, but you're done. Those are the 8 questions that we're looking for. Do we have any questions? Ask them now or never ask again. We have a question. I'm just kidding you. Go ahead.
To your last point, I'm just curious, how much importance do you place upon securing other funders and where the organization may be in that process?
That's interesting because sometimes the proposals have come with some other funders already into that. Some we recognize that they will need more. It's not a requirement. It's not something that, you know, even the possibility is there. But you need to have an answer when the board asks, because they will ask. You're showing this as a $2 million project. Where do you see other funds coming from? Right? But it is not a requirement to have other funders, and you do not have to have that already fully funded beyond the $1 million. I have board members here. Do y'all want to come up and answer any of these questions? You're more than welcome to. All righty. And I had a question over here. Yes, Healy.
I have a question about the budget, and this might be a question for those who've already been funded. So when you have an innovative project, and you have a new idea, how do you predict how much it's going to cost, and what happens when there are changes along the way?
Any one of y'all want to come up, grab a microphone?
Yeah, I'll be, so our budget has completely changed from what we proposed. And in fact, we had a big distribution scheduled for next month because we initially planned to launch the project next month. And we haven't found a site yet, so that's not happening. So last week we said, hey, you know, that distribution is not needed right now. Let's revise and look to when it's going to happen. So they've been very flexible to work with us as it's evolved over time.
Healy, were you talking more about the beginning in terms of before you present, before you hit send? How do you develop your budget? John, come on up. Chris, no, that's also good.
Everyone comes up with their approach, and so I think the reason why maybe budget's at the end is it's probably the least important in terms of where you're going to spend your time, because it's really about is the why of why you're doing it solid, and then the hows and the whats are going to dictate the budget. So, you know, it may be a process of sitting down and saying, you know what, let's force yourself to come up with 3 different ways to do your budget. And I think the goal of being aggressive and being realistic is probably the most important as well. Is I think it's better to put everything you think it's going to take to be successful. I think as nonprofits, sometimes we're really scared to kind of put the true cost. I don't think this is a foundation you need to be shy about with.
Chris.
Drop the mic.
That's coming up.
Done. Don't be shy.
Yeah, that's a very challenging part of putting this together is really getting a sense for the budget. I remember we had our project had a couple years of R&D kind of work to it, but this was a whole new vision that we were proposing. And so I remember sitting down with a contractor that we were going to get to build this thing out, and he's like, okay, show me the plans. And I said, well, when you build it, I'll show it to you, because it hasn't been done, right? So we had to really just do as much research as we could, find other crazy people around the country that were trying the same thing, get as much information as we could, and put forward our best budget that we could see at that given point in time. And yes, just as Greg said, it changed, almost immediately. We put it in, and a month later it was like, But fortunately, the Alliance has been an amazing partner. They just said, hey, well, explain why that's happened. As long as you can explain why, and that makes sense, or at least mostly sense, then they're still behind you. So,
yeah, thank you, Elizabeth.
I'll make a plug for use your best hypothesis. I mean, you have what you know, and use that as a starting point. The other thing, though, and it was also in the 8 points, and I just will stress this, we do want to know what the future looks like. What's the sustainability? The sustainability may be go get other funding, say that. Maybe a population you don't really think you're going to find a pathway for funding, but in Greg's case and in the solutions case, there is a funding stream. These things do actually eventually get to neutral, and we want to know that. And that will influence us as well. So I know that, yeah, you got to get all the other stuff right, but I will tell you it is a differentiator when somebody can at least put forward a hypothesis that makes sense, and even a sustainability plan that may be experimental, but at least it speaks to that they are thinking about the revenue stream, they're thinking about whether this is government funding. In the Text for Babies scenario, the transition needed to be that this was going to somehow be paid for through the current system. So those are things this has been the light part in the equation, so I just wanted to take a moment and really emphasize that it matters to get this right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Greg, you have a question? No.
Do you put on the same process for the finalists, the preparation for the pitch?
Yes. Yes. So.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was a surprise to me the first time.
Okay, sure. I mean, you definitely talked about it in your presentation as well. But once we get all of the proposals in, 5 finalists are selected, up to 5. We're not committed to always having 5, but up to 5 are selected to come forward to our board and our blue ribbon panel to present their proposals. During the time between when they are selected and when they actually present, they work with the business planning consultant to help them really hone in on their message and to work with them to get the presentation to the format that the board is looking for. And so they are much better prepared for how that is. It helps to shape message. It helps to shape kind of you only get 8 to 12 slides to present in 15 minutes. So it's really getting it down to that preciseness. You think the character shortage was a problem. Wait till you get into that. The business planning consultant has always told me that when he sits down with the group for the very first time, and he says, so what is it you're doing? People typically take an hour and a half to tell him. Yeah, you laugh, but try it, right? And then he says, okay, that's great. We're going to get that down to 15 minutes. So that's the process that you go through with the business planning consultant. And we do hope, because we do put 5 organizations through that opportunity, that you come out with a good message, a good model, that you can take it out to other people and you can present it to others and get funding even if we don't fund you. So yeah, definitely, that's always a part of the process. All right. Again, if you want to get in touch with me, I'll say this again at the end, but if you want to get in touch with me, please do so, and I will talk with you about what your proposal is. So I want to thank all of our presenters and our trustees today for participating. We have another poll, so get your cell phones out. 2 questions. One is, after all of this that we have presented to you, what do you think is the element of innovation that is essential for an Alliance Healthcare Foundation I2 project proposal? Is it technology? Text A. If it's systems change, text B. If it's something that's never been done, text C. If you're unsure still, I have completely failed. Text D. Then I'll go home and cry. And I know who you are. All right. Thank you guys very much. Yes, it's definitely all about systems change. I'm glad that came across in our presentation today. So, second. What did you think? What did you think of today? You loved it. It was so. If you still have questions. All right, you guys. All of that 10, 12, 11% that's in there that I still have questions, you know what to do, right? You're going to be calling me. You're going to be emailing me. We're going to set up a time to talk so that I can answer the questions that you still have remaining. I don't know what you're saying to me, Kevin. I see you making funny faces at me. But we are live streaming it? Okay, yeah, that's live streaming. So you can go back and look at that video. I figured it out. I know him. So yes, so you can go back onto Facebook. You can watch the video if you have questions. We do also have 2 webinars that are coming up that it's on the back of your program. If you have others that you think need to see this or listen to this or whatever, you can connect them to the webinars that are next week on Wednesday, April the 5th, and then also Friday, April the 7th. I will be conducting that. I'll be going through the application. I'll be available to answer questions. But even beyond the webinars, you can also still contact me. If you have questions about the proposal, contact me. If you're into the process and you're filling out the application and you have questions, then contact Michelle. That contact information is on your program. We'll also be sending that out in an email to everybody that's in attendance. And you all got a raffle ticket when you signed in. Get your raffle tickets out. Michelle. So what you get is a gift card for 30 days of Hatha Yoga. Again, do this after you fill out the application. It's all about stress reduction, right? You want to pick it? You pick it. All right, are you ready? And the winning number is... Don't pick a board trustee. Okay. The last 4 numbers are 1, 2, 3, 0. 12:30. Is it Magnus? All right. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
May 4th is the day of our 130th anniversary of the album. So I hope there's a moment